Good morning. Today is the 27th day of First Adar and the 7th of March. We are now in the fifth reading of Parshat Vayak'hel. And in it we hear about how Bezalel, the artisan, made three of the vessels in the sanctuary, the ark, and the covering of the ark, and the table. And as we mentioned, these are all made out of pure gold. But let's read the first. Section about the ark. We're looking at Exodus 37:1. So Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. He overlaid it with pure gold inside and out. So this is very interesting because, what do you mean? If he made it of acacia wood, then what does it mean he overlaid it with pure gold inside and out? So the explanation is that there was an ark made of acacia wood, and actually, Bezalel didn't even make this ark. The person who made this ark, even though it says that it was him, it was named after him because he did all the ornamentation and putting it together. But this ark that's made out of acacia wood was actually made by Moses before he went up to the mountain, and God told him to prepare a ark to put the tablets in. But Moses broke the tablets, so what went into this ark in the end, when he came down, was the shards of the tablets. Now you remember that everything that we're reading here happened long after the golden calf. So this ark of acacia wood already existed for a few months. And then what Bezalel did was he made two more arks, one that fit inside the wooden ark and one that the wooden ark fit inside of. And so you have actually three arks. And there's a whole question about whether he encased the top where all three arcs were, like along the edges, whether he encased it in gold also. But assuming that he didn't, the cover of the ark that we talked about is something separate, a separate vessel according to some opinions. It sat on it and it closed the ark. So he made these two arks or chests. And here it says he made a gold rim on the outer golden chest for it all around. The rim is not the same thing as a covering to cover the wood. It's something on the outside. It's like an ornament on the outside. And he cast 4 gold rings for the ark on its 4 corners, 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other side. He made rods of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. He then inserted the rods through the rings on the sides of the ark so that the ark could be carried by these wooden rods. So what we want to talk about is a very interesting thing about this whole description is that the ark here is written using only the letters Aleph, Resh, Nun. Usually when you write ark, you write it in full. It's Aleph, Resh, Vav, Nun. So the Vav here is missing. And because the first letter is the ark, it's the descriptive the definitive pronoun, the, which in Hebrew is just a hey. So the 4 letters of the ark, hey, Aleph, Resh, Nun, they also spell, if you permute them, Aharon, which is Aaron, his brother. What does this have to do with anything? Why even mention this? So first of all, you need to know that this is the way that in the inner dimension of Torah, this is how we study. That we look at words and we permute them. We try to understand, well, what happens when you permute a word? What do you get? This is an understanding that the letters of the Torah have many, many faces, as we said. So sometimes the faces are a different meaning of the same word. Sometimes the faces arrive when you permute. Sometimes it's when you take a value or you use a gematria scheme that's not well known. Sometimes it's what we call transmutation of letters that we exchange. We have a mapping, different types of mappings between letters. So all these bring out different aspects. So the aspect that we're bringing out now, the face of the Torah that we're bringing out now, is because of this permutation that somehow B'Tselem making the ark is related to Aaron. How is it related to Aaron? To understand that, we have to go back to the very first words of the Parsha. Vayak'hel Moshe. Moses gathered. And here's another thing that we do in the inner teachings of the Torah. We ask the question, where else do we find a word? The word gathered is quite rare. There's actually only 3 times in the entire Bible in which this word appears, Vayak'hel. Twice it's in the meaning that it is in our Parsha, that he gathered. And one time, the first time, is Vayak'hel. And there it's talking about when the people gathered around Aaron to force him to make the golden calf. So you remember that all this gold here is coming to make up for something. It's true that it was intended to be for the tabernacle, all the gold was created for that. But still, the idea here is that making the golden ark is like a rectification for Aaron. So even though Aaron, and again, his name is Ha'aron, Aharon, the letters permute to spell his name. This whole parsha that Moses gathered the people is a rectification for the people gathered around Aaron and forced him, not fully forced him, but convinced him to make the golden calf. And he still, even though God forgave him, he still needs a rectification. And the rectification is through this gathering here. But we said there's 3 times this word Vayak'hel. Again, the first time is Vayik'hel. It's the same lettering, it's just a different pronunciation. There it means they gathered around. And here it's Moses gathered. And then in Numbers, in Parshat Korach, there we will hear Vayak'hel Korach. We will hear that Korach gathered his assembly around Moses and Aaron, and they claimed the entire congregation is holy, and why do you take pride over the people of God, and so on. And his whole argument about everybody having to be equal. So that's the 3rd time. So even though we have in our parsha that it was fixed, it was corrected, it was rectified, the first gathering of the people around Aaron, this fell down again. So it's telling us that gathering is not such a simple thing. It's very hard to gather people for the right cause. And unfortunately, most of the time when you're able to gather people, it's either for something negative, like it was by Aaron being surrounded by the people who gathered together around him to force him to make the golden calf, or it's for some cause which on the face of it is right, but is built out of tension and contention and fighting against Moses in this case, Moses and Aaron. So it's not so simple to gather properly. But let's continue with this. This whole structure of gold outside, wood inside, gold inside, which is how, so it wasn't overlaid, it was sort of like 3 separate chests, one inside the other, like babushkas. And the inner one is gold, the outer one is gold, the one in between, the medium one, is made out of wood. What does that signify? So we have a beautiful explanation that gold is always related to awe. Silver is love and gold is awe. Silver is love because that's literally what it means. That's actually what we talked about 2 days ago. That silver is what we call kisufin. Kisufin is to have yearning for something. So silver is always related to loving kindness, to chesed, to love. Gold is like fire. It's its color. And there's 7 colors of gold. All of them were in David's beard, it says. His beard had all the colors of gold in it. David equals gold. David is equal to 14 in Hebrew, Dalet Vav Dalet. And Zahav, gold, is equal to 14. It's also, like we saw 2 days ago, it's related to the intellect. Chabad, which also equals 14. Chabad, not the movement, but Chabad, the Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat, the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, the 3 sfirot of the intellect. So now it's saying that Moses is the inner wooden cabinet. He's the inner wooden ark. And he has around him gold and in him gold. So he has awe, again, because gold is awe, whereas silver is love. So he has awe within and he has awe without. He's overlaid from the outside, from the inside, with awe. Now the interesting thing is that even though he has awe on the outside and awe on the inside, the wood itself is pleasure. And how do we know this? Because if we take the entire verse that we just read, Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. We calculate its value. It's exactly equal to Mayafitu Mana'amta Avabatanugim, a verse from the Song of Songs. How beautiful and how pleasurable is the pleasurable love. How beautiful and how pleasant is the pleasurable love. And that verse, because the Song of Songs in general is a story of the soul and God. The woman there, the bride, is the soul, and the beloved is God. It's a story of how the soul loves God. And from it we learn all the different states of the soul. And so we have this verse about how beautiful and how pleasant is pleasurable love. Pleasurable love is the highest form of love. Ahava b'tanugim. It's actually related to the world to come. It's not even. It's hard to get it in this world. Pleasurable love, because usually when someone has love, everybody knows that love hurts, or you feel love. But pleasurable love means that it's constant and it's always good. It's always pleasant. It's always beautiful. It's something completely different. It's a type of love that you can only have if you are connected to God in a way where there can be no loss of the connection. So it's a very high type of love where there's nothing like that. So we say that this whole verse is describing that pleasurable love. So what do we have now? That this pleasurable love is like the wood inside of a feeling of awe on the inside and a feeling of awe on the outside. To say it another way, Moses feels this or experiences this pleasure because he has awe on the inside and awe on the outside, golden on the inside, golden on the outside. But because of that, he doesn't actually know that it's his love. He doesn't know that he's the one who's experiencing it. It's just the experience by itself. What does this all lead to? That there are ways, and this is what Bezalel was able to inspire here, that there are ways in which these structures in the tabernacle, they too can be studied to understand how the soul can achieve certain levels. And the level here is the level of having gold on the outside, gold on the inside, and somehow having pleasure that is not experienced as my pleasure. It's just experienced as constant flowing pleasure from God. There's nothing else there. And that's the feeling that this entire verse is talking about. So this is a different facet. And if you understand this, you understand something very basic about what it means to rectify a sin. That what Aaron did, that he did something like this that he created the calf, and he created it out of gold, needed to be rectified. The real rectification is this ability, like we say here, this ark, which represents a state of gold on the inside, gold on the outside, and pleasure in between. The state of pleasure in between them, which is not even felt as pleasure. What does that mean? It means that whenever a person performs a sin, it's not the punishment he receives, it's not the rebuke he receives, it's not even the fact that he agrees from this moment and on never to do this again. it's first of all creating an infinite connection with God, rising up to understand that if I fell from a certain place, that place was a place I could fall from because I was not connected. The connection is what really rectifies the sin. It's as if every time that we do something wrong, it's God calling out to us and saying, you're not connected to me. And that's why I let you fall. Meaning, your rope is not tied where it should be. So tie your rope back where it needs to be tied, and then you won't fall again. And that's this whole idea that when a person feels that he's tied above, he has this feeling of pleasurable love that he can never fall, he can never go anywhere. That's what all the sins in the world are meant to bring us to bring us to want that state in which we can never fall again, in which we can never be severed from the source of life. So with this we'll end today. Thanks, and hope to see you tomorrow.